You are welcome to my YouTube channel. If you enjoy my stories, kindly subscribe and share this video with your friends and family so they can enjoy it too. Thank you. Enjoy your new story.
The candlelight danced across the rehearsal dinner table, glimmering off the glassware like stars scattered in a nervous sky. My palms were sweating beneath the napkin I gripped. I had dreamed of this day. Well, almost this day, since Cole and I first met at the library downtown. But I hadn't dreamed it would come with so many eyes watching, or so much pressure pressing against my chest. Cole sat at the far end, laughing with his groomsmen, the sound warm and proud. He looked so at ease in his navy suit, his hair slicked neatly, his mother's pearl pin glinting on his lapel. Dana Sloan, my soon-to-be mother-in-law, was the kind of woman who never had to raise her voice to make someone feel small. Her smile did all the work. She sat across from me now, eyes sharp, every move deliberate. The servers passed trays of roasted vegetables and bread, but I barely tasted anything. I was too focused on trying to belong, too aware of how every detail, the lace on my dress, the color of my lipstick, felt under inspection. I raised my glass when it was my turn to speak. My voice trembled at first but steadied as I looked at Cole. Tomorrow isn't just about vows, I said softly. It's about promises. Promises we've already been keeping without even realizing it. People smiled. Cole's friends clapped. For a moment I felt light. Then, as the chatter resumed and laughter bubbled around the table, Dana leaned closer, her perfume soft but sharp, like lilies masking something rotten underneath. Her lips barely moved, but I heard every word. She's not good enough. My body froze. My heart thudded once, heavy and hollow. I didn't look at her. I didn't speak. I just forced a smile, my throat burning as I swallowed the ache that rose like a wave. All I could think was, not here, not tonight. Cole caught my eye from across the table. He smiled at me, oblivious. I smiled back, pretending my heart wasn't breaking. But in that moment I made a quiet vow. Not to prove Dana wrong, but to stay true to myself. Whatever happened next, I would not let bitterness define me. Little did I know that choice would change everything. That night, after the guests had left and the house had quieted, I sat alone by the window of our small apartment overlooking the harbor. The moonlight spilled across the floor like silver milk, and I let my breath slow. I replayed her whisper again and again. Those 4 words, dripping with cold certainty. She's not good enough. Cole had gone home with his family. He wanted to keep the tradition, he said, of spending the night before the wedding apart. I'd laughed, pretending it didn't sting. But when the laughter faded, I felt small. Then there was a knock at the door. Soft, hesitant. When I opened it, a woman stood there with a small bouquet in her hands. She wore a faded shawl, her hands rough from work. I recognized her from earlier, the florist who had insisted on delivering the flowers herself. Mrs. Oren, I said, surprised. Is everything okay? She smiled faintly. Forgive me for coming this late, dear. I just had something to tell you. She handed me the bouquet. White gardenias, my favorite. And for a moment I caught the faint scent of soil and rain. Be kind, she said softly, her voice trembling with something I couldn't name. But be watchful. Tomorrow, truth has its own way of speaking. She left after saying that, even before I could respond, her steps fading into the quiet street. I stood there, heart thudding, clutching the flowers as if they could explain what she meant. Was she warning me about Dana or something else? I set the bouquet down and touched one of the petals. It was smooth, cool. A single droplet of water slid from its edge, catching the moonlight. That night I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Dana's whisper. And behind it, the florist's words, like a riddle that refused to fade. Morning sunlight spilled through the curtains, warming the wooden floor. The wedding day had arrived. I tried to shake the unease clinging to me. The girls were already texting pictures. Cole's friends were decorating the garden, and the hairstylist was on her way. Everything should have felt magical. But when Dana entered the bridal suite unannounced, carrying a box of jewelry, my pulse quickened. "These are family heirlooms," she said, setting them down. "They've been worn by generations of Sloane brides." Her tone was sweet, but I could hear the ice beneath it. "Open the box." Inside were gleaming pearls, flawless and heavy. "They're beautiful," I said quietly. She studied me for a long moment. "I hope you can live up to them," and she left. The room felt smaller after she was gone. I sat by the vanity, staring at my reflection. My eyes were wide, unsure. "Be kind," I whispered to myself. "But be watchful." Later, as the photographer arrived and laughter filled the hall, I noticed Mrs. Oren among the staff, arranging flowers with quiet precision. She met my eyes once and nodded slightly, as if reminding me of something unseen. I didn't know it yet, but she had already done something that morning. Something that would change what everyone heard before the vows. The ceremony began beneath a canopy of lanterns strung across the garden. The air shimmered with warmth and perfume. Guests whispered, laughed, took photos. Cole stood at the altar, radiant, his smile pulling me forward like gravity. For a brief moment everything felt right. Then, just as the officiant lifted his hand to begin, a sound broke through the speakers. Not music. Voice. Dana's voice. "She's not good enough." The crowd gasped. Cole's head snapped toward the sound booth. The whisper repeated, echoing through the garden like a ghostly confession. My breath caught in my throat. Dana's face turned white. Then the whisper faded, and another voice filled the silence. It wasn't something I'd said aloud. It was something I had recorded that morning without knowing why. A message I'd made in private, meant only for myself. If ever I am misunderstood, let my love speak louder than words. And if someone doubts me, I'll thank them for reminding me what real strength looks like. The guests were still. Even the wind paused. Dana's eyes filled with shock. Cole looked from me to her, confusion flickering across his face. And that was only the beginning. The rest of the ceremony was a blur. People whispered, phones buzzed, eyes darted between me and Dana. But I kept my posture steady, graceful. When it was time for my vows, I looked straight at Cole, and somehow, through all the chaos, found my voice again. "Love," I said softly, "isn't about perfection. It's about patience, the kind that holds steady even when it's misunderstood." The guests leaned in, quiet now, as if afraid to breathe. Dana's expression softened, but her lips trembled. She was realizing what had happened, but not how. When the ceremony ended, applause rose like a wave. People surrounded me, praising my composure, calling it dignified, inspiring. But I could feel something deeper brewing, something that hadn't yet surfaced. Later, as I slipped away to the quiet edge of the garden, Mrs. Oren appeared again. She smiled faintly. "You did well," she said. "Did you?" I began, but she shook her head. "Not tonight. Tomorrow you'll understand." Then she walked away, vanishing into the lantern-lit path. I stood there, shivering, not from the cold, but from the growing truth that this story wasn't over. It was only beginning. That night, after the ceremony, the house pulsed with chatter, music, and champagne laughter. Guests toasted. Photographers flashed. Everyone wanted a picture with the bride who silenced gossip with grace. If only they knew how uneasy I felt beneath the praise. Cole held my hand most of the night, his thumb tracing small circles against my skin. "You were incredible," he whispered. "The way you handled everything. Mom's probably never been so quiet in her life." He laughed softly, but I caught the flicker of confusion in his eyes. I didn't answer, just smiled. I didn't want to spoil his joy with doubts. When the crowd thinned, Dana approached us. Her pearl necklace shimmered under the chandeliers, her smile tight. "May I have a word with Victoria?" "Alone." Cole hesitated. I nodded, forcing calm. We stepped out to the terrace. The night air was cool, scented with roses and the faint salt of the sea. Music drifted faintly from inside. Dana stood there, arms crossed. "That recording," she said sharply. "Where did it come from?" I don't know, I said honestly. I didn't plan for that to happen. Then who did? Her voice trembled with restrained anger. It was your voice forgiving me. Who would have had that? Unless you. I recorded it for myself, I said quietly. Not for anyone to hear. She studied me, eyes narrowing. Do you expect me to believe that coincidence? That my private comment somehow ended up on loudspeakers the next day? I met her gaze. Maybe the truth wanted to be heard. For a moment neither of us spoke. The waves below lapped against the rocks, steady and cold. Dana's voice softened suddenly. You embarrassed me in front of everyone. You embarrassed yourself, I whispered. Her breath caught. Then she turned sharply and left, heels clicking against the stone. I stood there, watching her disappear into the golden light of the ballroom. My hands were shaking, but not from fear anymore, from clarity. Inside, Mrs. Oren was clearing tables, her face half hidden by her scarf. Our eyes met briefly. She gave me a subtle nod, as though confirming that something larger was unfolding. Later that night, when Cole and I finally reached our car, I spotted a small brown envelope tucked beneath the windshield wiper. Had my name on it. I looked around, but no one was nearby. Probably another card, Cole said sleepily. But when I opened it, a folded note and a small flash drive fell into my palm. In careful handwriting it said, "For your peace of mind. Listen when you're alone." No signature. My heart pounded as I slipped the drive into my purse. That night, when Cole fell asleep, I crept into the living room, laptop trembling in my hands. The screen flickered, and a familiar voice filled the air. Mrs. Oren's. "This is proof," she said softly. "Proof that kindness deserves to be heard." Then another sound played. Dana's whisper again, clearer this time, followed by a faint shuffle, and the soft click of a microphone hidden nearby. My breath caught. The florist had recorded it. But why? The screen went black, leaving me alone with 100 questions, and one quiet certainty. This wasn't the end. It was the start of something much deeper. The next morning, sunlight cut through the blinds, painting stripes across the sheets. Cole was still asleep beside me, breathing slow and peaceful. I sat up carefully, my thoughts tangled. The flash drive lay on the nightstand, gleaming faintly. Should I tell him? Should I show him what I'd found? I wanted to, but something held me back. A quiet voice whispering, "Not yet." Instead, I got dressed and slipped out to the garden. The air smelled of damp earth and coffee from the caterers still packing up. I spotted Mrs. Oren near the flower arch, gathering stray petals into a small basket. When she saw me, she smiled. "Morning, dear. Why did you do it?" Yes. Why record that moment? She hesitated, fingers brushing over a petal. Because truth needed help finding its way. And because I owe that woman something. Dana. She nodded slowly. Years ago, I worked in her home. She dismissed me after accusing me of stealing a necklace. I didn't. I never forgot the look in her eyes when she decided I was beneath her. My chest tightened. You wanted revenge. She looked up sharply. No, Justice, there's a difference. And maybe, just maybe, to remind her that people she steps on have hearts too. I fell silent, the wind tugging at my hair. I didn't mean for it to play during the wedding, she continued. I only meant to give you the proof later if you ever needed it. But somehow the audio file got into the playlist. Maybe fate had its own plan. I thought of the whispered words. My voice, her voice, the stunned silence of the crowd. Fate indeed. What should I do now? Yes. Mrs. Oren smiled faintly. Do what you always do, stay kind. Let her face herself. Before I could ask more, she handed me a folded piece of paper. My address, she said. If you ever want the rest of the truth, come find me. Then she turned and walked away, leaving me with a racing heart and more questions than answers. When I returned inside, Cole was awake, scrolling through messages on his phone. You okay? He asked, studying my face. He nodded. Just tired. He hesitated, then said, Mom wants us to come over for brunch. She says it's important. I felt my stomach twist. All right, I said quietly. But deep down, I knew this brunch wasn't about family bonding. It was about confrontation. And I wasn't sure either of us was ready for what would come out of it. Dana's house always felt like a museum. Wide halls, white walls, no warmth. Even the air seemed to hush itself when we entered. Cole's hand rested lightly on my back as we stepped inside for brunch, but I could tell he was tense. He tried to hide it with small talk, yet his jaw was set. His voice a little too bright. Dana met us in the foyer wearing a lavender dress and pearls again, as if nothing had happened. "You made it," she said and kissed Cole's cheek. Her lips brushed mine briefly, polite and cold. "Let's eat before everything cools." The dining room gleamed with polished silver. A crystal vase filled with white roses sat at the center of the table. I wondered if she'd chosen them because she knew I liked them or because she wanted to reclaim their beauty from the florist who had supplied them. We sat. Dana poured coffee for Cole but not for me. "So," she said casually, "yesterday was eventful." Cole stiffened. "Mom," she raised a hand, "I'm not starting a fight. I just want to understand what happened." Her gaze turned to me. "You said you didn't plan that recording, Victoria. I want to believe you. But how do I explain to my friends that my own words humiliated me in front of 200 guests?" I swallowed. Maybe the explanation doesn't matter as much as what the moment revealed. She arched an eyebrow. "Which is?" "That people see more than you think. They saw how you spoke to me before and how I reacted. Maybe they drew their own conclusions." For a long moment, silence stretched between us like a rope about to snap. Cole cleared his throat. "Mom, can we just move forward? Yesterday's behind us." Dana sighed, setting down her cup. "Of course, darling." Then her voice lowered. "But forgiveness doesn't erase accountability." Her words stung, though not for the reason she intended. There was something in her tone, a tremor of guilt she couldn't quite disguise. After brunch, when Cole stepped outside to take a call, I stayed back to help clear the dishes. Dana and I worked in silence. The clink of porcelain filled the space between us. Finally, she said quietly, "You remind me of someone." I looked up. "Who?" "A young woman who used to work here years ago. She was kind, almost too kind. I fired her once for something I never proved." I froze, dish still in hand. "Mrs. Oren." Dana blinked, startled. "You know her?" I nodded slowly. "She arranged our wedding flowers. She's the one who gave me the bouquet before the ceremony." Her face went pale. "Good heavens!" She sank into a chair, hands trembling. "I never imagined she was still around. Or that she'd remember me." "She remembered," I said softly. "And she remembered how you treated her." Dana's eyes filled with something like shame, though pride kept it from spilling over. "She was clever, that one. Always watching. I accused her of stealing a necklace because..." She hesitated. "Because it was easier than admitting I'd misplaced it myself." The admission hung heavy in the air. "She lost everything because of me," she whispered. "Her reputation, her home. I didn't even think of her again. And now..." "Yes." Her eyes flicked toward me, glistening. "Now she's found her revenge." I shook my head. "No, not revenge. Truth." For the first time, Dana didn't argue. She looked small, fragile even, the sharp edges of her confidence dulled. Cole re-entered just then, smiling obliviously. "Everything okay here?" We both nodded, perhaps too quickly. He didn't notice. "Good, because Mom's invited us to stay for a few days. She says the house feels too quiet." I glanced at Dana. Her face was unreadable. "Of course," I said softly. But as I followed him upstairs, my thoughts spun. If Dana had admitted her guilt, maybe she could make things right. Yet something told me Mrs. Oren wasn't finished. That evening, as we unpacked in the guest room, I opened my purse and found another folded note inside. Same neat handwriting. "You're close to the truth. But there's still one thing Dana hasn't told you. My hands went cold. I stepped to the window. Down the long driveway, I saw a figure standing near the gate. A woman with a shawl, holding a small bundle of flowers. Mrs. Oren. She looked up at the house once, then turned away. And just like before, I knew that silence had meaning. I barely slept that night. The note in my purse felt like it pulsed through the darkness. "You're close to the truth." The words wouldn't leave me alone. Cole had drifted off beside me, one arm thrown over the blanket, breathing steady and oblivious. But my mind kept replaying the image of Mrs. Oren at the gate, motionless beneath the porch light. By dawn, curiosity had turned into something sharper, dread mixed with determination. I slipped out of bed, pulled on a sweater and padded down the hall. The old floorboards of the Sloane estate groaned under my feet, as though the house itself wanted to warn me. Dana's portrait hung at the landing, youthful, elegant, smiling in a way that didn't reach her eyes. I stopped and looked closer. The artist had painted a small silver locket around her neck. I'd never seen her wear one in real life. In the kitchen, faint morning light spilled across the marble counters. A small trail of flower petals, white and slightly wilted, led from the back door toward the conservatory. My pulse quickened. It couldn't be coincidence. Followed them. The conservatory was thick with the smell of damp soil and jasmine. Sunlight filtered through the glass ceiling, catching on the dust. In the far corner, beneath a bench of orchids, something glinted. A small silver key tied with ribbon. A scrap of paper lay beside it, its edges smudged with dirt. "For what was locked away in pride's shadow," it read. My heart thudded. I slipped the key into my pocket and glanced around, half expecting Mrs. Oren to emerge from the mist of hanging plants. But the space was empty. Only the faint creak of the glass panes shifting in the morning air broke the silence. When I turned back toward the door, Dana stood there. "Couldn't sleep?" she asked softly. I startled, clutching the note behind my back. "No, I just wanted some air." She studied me, her eyes narrowing slightly. Then her gaze dropped to the floor. "You found it, didn't you?" Froze. She stepped closer, voice barely a whisper. "She left it here for you. I didn't think she'd dare come back." "What is this key?" "Yes." Dana sighed and reached for a chair, lowering herself as though the truth had weight. "Years ago, when my husband was alive, there was a locked trunk in his study. He said it contained our family records, old deeds, nothing important. But after he died, I opened it once and found letters, dozens of them, from another woman." Her fingers trembled against the armrest. "Mrs. Oren," I said quietly. Dana nodded. Her name wasn't Oren then. It was Lydia Hartwell. She worked for us before Cole was born. The room felt suddenly smaller. And the letters. She claimed the man she loved promised her everything. That he would leave his wife. That he'd build a life with her. Foolish, girlish fantasies. But the handwriting. Dana's breath caught. It was my husband's. I stood very still. The air smelled faintly of roses and decay. "She was pregnant," Dana whispered. "And I was too proud to let the scandal destroy us. I paid her to disappear." The words struck me like a physical blow. "And now she's back," I murmured. Dana nodded. "Back to ruin the family that ruined hers." I wanted to feel anger, but what I felt instead was sorrow. Deep and quiet, like the echo of something lost too long ago. "Where's the trunk now?" "Yes." "In the attic," she said. "Locked, of course." I pulled the small silver key from my pocket and set it gently on the table. "Then I think she wants us to open it." Dana stared at it as if it might burn her fingers. "Victoria," she said finally, voice trembling, "if you find what I think you'll find, you'll wish you hadn't." "Maybe," I said. "But lies always rot faster in the dark." The attic groaned above us like a restless ghost. Dust motes swirled in the beam of light from Dana's old lantern as we climbed the narrow staircase. The air grew colder the higher we went, heavy with the scent of cedar and thyme. My pulse beat in my ears, loud enough to drown the creak of every step. Dana walked ahead of me, her silk robe brushing against the rail. She moved slower than usual, as if she already knew what waited for us. When we reached the top, she hesitated before pulling the string that lit the single bare bulb. The attic looked like a museum of forgotten things. Trunks, hat boxes, broken frames. And there, near the far wall beneath a slanted beam, sat a long chest of polished oak. Its brass lock was dulled with age, the initials HS engraved faintly beneath. "Harold Sloane," Dana whispered. Her voice sounded smaller in the dimness. I knelt beside the chest and pulled the silver key from my pocket. It slid into the lock perfectly, as if it had been waiting for this moment. When I turned it, a soft click echoed through the stillness. Dana flinched. Inside, old linen and papers were stacked neatly, until I lifted the first layer and saw what lay beneath. A small reel-to-reel recorder, several cassettes labeled in faded ink, and a bundle of letters tied with blue ribbon. "Play one," I said. Dana shook her head. I can't bear to hear his voice again. I hesitated, then picked up one of the cassettes. The writing was shaky but clear. April 17th, confession. My fingers trembled as I slid it into the recorder. The machine whirred to life with a faint hiss. Then came a man's voice, deep, weary, and filled with something close to regret. "If you ever hear this, it means I failed to fix what I broke. Lydia deserved better. I told her I would choose her, but fear kept me bound to a name, not to love. And now there's a child who will grow up believing he's mine when he isn't." Dana's hand flew to her mouth. "Cole," the voice continued, "was born months after Lydia left, but the blood test was altered. I paid the doctor to change the results so my wife would never know. I thought I was protecting my family. Instead, I doomed 2 women, and a boy who may never know who he really is." The tape clicked. Silence filled the attic like a storm cloud. Dana's breath hitched. "That can't be true," she whispered. "Cole isn't mine." I reached for her, but she staggered backward. No, he's my son. I raised him." She pressed a trembling hand against the trunk, steadying herself. "He can't ever find out." But I couldn't look away from the recorder. On the side, a compartment held a smaller cassette labeled Simply Truth. Tucked beside it was a folded letter addressed to my son. I opened it carefully. "If you find this, I want you to know that your real mother never stopped loving you. She left to protect you from the hatred in this house. Her name was Lydia Hartwell, and she was the kindest soul I ever knew. Dana was cruel to her, but perhaps time has softened her heart. I pray she'll forgive herself someday, even if you never can." Tears blurred the ink. I looked up at Dana, who stood frozen, her face pale beneath the lantern glow. "You need to tell him," I said. She shook her head violently. "No, this will destroy him. Destroy us." "Truth doesn't destroy, Dana," I whispered. "It frees." But she turned away, clutching her robe tight around her shoulders. "If you love him, you'll stay silent." I wanted to argue, to tell her secrets like this only rot the soul. But the words caught in my throat. Downstairs, the first light of dawn spilled through the windows. The day of the wedding had begun. And somewhere below, Cole was waking up, unaware that the life he thought he knew was about to fracture. I switched off the recorder, tucking both tapes into my purse. "If you won't tell him," I said softly, "then maybe the truth will find another way." Dana turned slowly, eyes glistening. "What are you planning to do, Victoria?" I met her gaze, steady and calm. "Whatever it takes to let the truth speak, even if I lose everything." The morning light felt unreal, pale and shimmering, like a veil over everything. Barely slept. My thoughts tangled with the discovery in the attic. The voice, the letter, the truth that now sat inside my purse like a heartbeat I couldn't silence. Downstairs, the Sloane estate buzzed with motion. Florists arrived, waiters carried trays. Music rehearsed in short bursts from the ballroom. The scent of lilies and sea salt drifted in through the open veranda doors. From outside, laughter rose. Cole's laughter, easy, bright, and oblivious. He looked radiant when I found him in the courtyard. his tie undone, hair damp from an early shower. "You didn't sleep either?" he asked, noticing my eyes. I smiled weakly. "Just nerves." He kissed my forehead. "We'll be fine. Mom's already rearranging table cards for the 5th time." Typical Dana. His voice was light, but I caught a flicker of tension when he mentioned her. I wondered how much he truly saw, how much she'd hidden over the years. As he walked away to greet guests, I slipped into the parlor where Mrs. Oren was arranging flowers near the windows. Her hands moved gently among the white roses, trimming each stem with precision. "You were right," I whispered, standing beside her. She didn't look up. "Truth always waits for its hour." I hesitated. "You knew, didn't you? About Cole?" Mrs. Oren paused, scissors midair. "I knew fragments, enough to understand that love, when chained to pride, breeds silence." She set down the flowers and turned to me. "You found the trunk." I nodded. Her gaze softened. "Then you also found the key to peace, if you use it wisely." Before I could ask what she meant, a maid entered. "Miss Victoria, the photographer's waiting by the terrace." I thanked her, but my heart thudded painfully. The ceremony was only hours away. As I turned to leave, Mrs. Oren gently pressed something into my hand. A tiny memory card. "If ever the truth needs a louder voice, this will help." "What's on it?" She only smiled. "Proof. But be sure before you play it." I tucked it into my clutch, the weight of 2 recordings now pressing against my conscience. By noon, the estate brimmed with guests. Dana glided through them, perfect as porcelain, pretending nothing had changed. When our eyes met across the room, there was something pleading there, a silent command not to ruin this day. But every time I looked at Cole, his laughter, his ease, the guilt tore deeper. He deserved to know who he was. At one point, while adjusting his boutonniere, he caught my trembling hands. "You okay?" I nodded, forcing a smile. "I'm just overwhelmed." He leaned closer. "That's what weddings are for. Beautiful chaos." I laughed softly, masking the ache. Then, as the ceremony setup began outside, I slipped upstairs for a breath of air. From the hallway window, I saw a figure in the garden, a young technician setting up the sound system. He was speaking with Mrs. Oren. She handed him something small, wrapped in a handkerchief. My heart skipped. Minutes later, she looked up and met my eyes from the courtyard. Her gaze was calm, almost sad, as if she'd already made a choice for me. Downstairs, the music rehearsal began again, faint through the floorboards. I pressed my palms to the window pane, cold glass against warm skin, and whispered to no one, "Please, not like this." But deep inside, I knew the truth was already in motion, slipping into wires, speakers, and circuits, waiting for its perfect hour to be heard. By the time I stepped back onto the terrace, the afternoon sun had begun its slow descent, staining the sky with amber light. The guests were gathered around the long rehearsal tables, glasses of champagne in hand, laughter spilling like music. Everything looked perfect, almost too perfect. Cole waved me over. "We're about to do the walkthrough again. Mom wants to make sure the timing is flawless." Dana stood near the archway, her smile tight, her movements rehearsed. Only I could see the faint tremor in her hands. When our eyes met, a flicker of unease passed between us. She knew that I knew, and I knew she was terrified of what I might do with that knowledge. As I took my place beside Cole, a burst of static came from the speakers, a crackling interruption that made a few guests wince. The technician near the soundboard frowned and adjusted a knob. "Apologies. Just testing the audio levels for tomorrow." But I heard something buried in that static. A single warped word. "Name." Froze. "Did anyone else hear that?" Cole looked at me, puzzled. "Hear what?" The technician lifted a headset. "Must have been interference, ma'am. Happens sometimes when files are switched during calibration." Switched? The word hit me like ice. I shrugged. We had 2 input drives. One was labeled vows_audio. The other backup_clip. Someone must have mixed them earlier. "I can fix it." My breath caught. Who gave you the drives? He glanced at a clipboard. The florist, ma'am. Said you wanted a test run before the ceremony. My gaze shot toward the garden, but Mrs. Oren was gone. Dana noticed my expression. What is it? Nothing, I said quickly. Just feedback. But inside my pulse thundered. Mrs. Oren's proof wasn't on the memory card anymore. It was already inside the sound system. She'd switched it. The rehearsal resumed, yet every step down the aisle felt heavy. The string quartet's gentle notes blurred beneath the sound of my heartbeat. Dana stood at the front, watching me, her jaw tight, her eyes pleading, don't let it happen here. When the rehearsal ended, Cole wrapped an arm around my waist. You were amazing. Tomorrow'll be perfect. Perfect. The word felt cruel. As guests drifted off toward the dining hall for rehearsal dinner, I excused myself and slipped behind the stage. The technician was packing cables. Could you show me the drives? I asked, trying to sound calm. He handed me 2 silver sticks. One was labeled vows_audio, the other backup_clip. I slid the second into my palm. Mind if I check this? Sure, he said, distracted. I plugged it into a nearby laptop. At first, nothing but silence. Then faint voices crackled through. She's not good enough. Dana's voice. Clear, unmistakable. The room tilted. My stomach twisted. But then a second voice followed. Mine, soft, calm, trembling. Maybe I'm not, but I'll spend every day proving love is. The entire exchange from the rehearsal had been recorded. Mrs. Oren had captured it all. And beneath that, faint but distinct, another file blinked. Confession MP3. I clicked, but before it could play, Dana's reflection appeared in the laptop screen behind me. Stop, she whispered. Turn. She looked smaller than ever, her eyes glossy. Please, Victoria. Whatever that woman told you, don't do this. I can't lose him. You already lost the truth, I said quietly. You just don't want him to find it. Her voice broke. He's my whole life. Then give him the chance to know his own. For a heartbeat, silence pressed between us. Then she reached out, trembling. If you play that tomorrow, everything will fall apart. Not just for me, for Cole too. Do you want to start your marriage by destroying his world? I swallowed hard. I want to start it honestly. Her hand dropped to her side. Then God help you both. She turned and walked away, heels tapping like gunshots across the wooden floor. I looked back at the screen. The cursor blinked over the audio files, waiting. Outside, the laughter of guests floated in through the open doors, light and careless. I ejected the drive and slipped it into my clutch beside the memory card. Now there were 2 truths, one whispered, one recorded, and both racing toward the same moment, the ceremony tomorrow. And as I stood there beneath the fading light, I realized something terrifying. No matter which truth I chose to share, someone I loved would break. Dawn bled slowly over the sea, soft pink turning to gold. I watched it from the window of the bridal suite, veil hanging beside me like a ghost of what the day should have been. My heart felt too full, of love, of guilt, of fear. Somewhere in the house, the staff were already setting up speakers, testing microphones, running cables through the garden. Each small sound felt dangerous, like sparks near dry grass. The rehearsal recording, the confession, both were still on those drives. I had planned to wake before anyone else and find the technician, to make sure nothing unexpected played today. But as I reached the ballroom, the stage was already being reset. The drives were gone. I found him crouched near the soundboard. Where are the audio files from yesterday? He blinked at me. Mrs. Sloane collected them an hour ago. Said you wanted her to. Course she had. Dana always moved first. I hurried upstairs. Her bedroom door was open. Inside, boxes and garment bags littered the bed. She was standing at her vanity, face pale under her makeup lights, holding both drives in her hand. I'm deleting everything, she said flatly. All of it. Dana, please. She turned, eyes wet. You think this truth will save him, but it will crush him. He adores you. If he hears that his whole life was built on a lie, he'll hate us both. She plugged one drive into her laptop. My pulse pounded. I stepped forward, grasping her wrist. You don't get to decide that. Her voice broke. He's my son. Soften. And that's exactly why he deserves honesty. We froze there, the low hum of the laptop between us. Then a notification pinged. An automatic backup complete. Dana frowned. What was that? The house Wi-Fi blinked. I stared at the screen. The system had auto-synced the audio files to the estate's shared drive, the same one the event coordinator used for the ceremony slideshow. Her eyes widened. It's uploading. We both lunged for the keyboard, but the progress bar hit 100%. The files were already copied, renamed, queued for the morning playlist. Dana gasped, hand over her mouth. It's going to play. I felt the floor tilt. Then maybe it's meant to. She stared at me, trembling. You wanted this all along. No, I whispered. But maybe Mrs. Oren did. At that moment, a knock sounded at the door. Cole's voice, warm, unsuspecting. You two ready? Guests are arriving. Dana wiped her eyes quickly, fixing her hair. We'll be right down, she called, voice steady again. When he left, we looked at each other. Two women bound by love for the same man, separated by the truth we couldn't contain. Downstairs, the music began to swell. The speakers crackled once, twice like a warning. And somewhere beyond our reach, the recording waited. Patient, silent, and unstoppable. By late morning, the Sloane Gardens were glowing. White ribbons stirred in the breeze, the scent of roses and salt air mixing like a memory that refused to fade. Guests filled the seats in neat rows, cameras ready, murmuring about the perfect weather. From the bridal suite balcony I could see everything. The ocean, the aisle, the gleam of the brass harp. Dana moved among the guests, graceful as ever, the mask of composure fixed firmly in place. Only I knew how close she was to unraveling. My bridesmaids fussed with my veil while the coordinator tested microphones again. Each burst of sound made my stomach clench. Every speaker was a door that might open to the truth. When the music finally started, I took a breath and stepped into sunlight. Cole stood beneath the archway, handsome, calm, unaware that the world he knew balanced on a thread. His eyes met mine and softened. That alone almost made me forget the fear. Halfway down the aisle, a faint pop echoed from the speakers. The harp faltered. Then through the stillness came a voice, quiet, trembling. She's not good enough. The words sliced through the air. The crowd gasped. The officiant froze. Cole's brow furrowed. Dana's face drained of color. The technician scrambled at the console, muttering apologies. Must have been a wrong file, sorry folks. Give me a second. Static. Heartbeat. Then another voice, mine, steady but soft. Maybe I'm not, but I'll spend every day proving love is. A collective murmur swept the guests. Some smiled in confusion, thinking it was part of the vows. Others turned toward Dana. Cole looked at me, bewildered. What was that? I shook my head. I don't know, but I did. The rehearsal clip. The one I'd tried to keep hidden. The music stuttered back to life, but the moment had changed. The air felt charged, trembling with expectation. As we reached the altar, I saw Mrs. Oren standing near the back, hands clasped, eyes shining with something like sorrow. She gave me the smallest nod, as if to say, this is only the beginning. The officiant cleared his throat. Shall we continue? Cole forced a laugh. Guess we just got our first blooper. Laughter rippled through the guests, easing the tension. I smiled faintly, though my pulse still raced. Dana avoided my eyes completely. She stood behind her son, fingers tight around her bouquet, lips pressed white. The ceremony went on, each line feeling fragile, as though the next breath might shatter it. When it was time for the vows, I reached into my clutch for the small card I'd written that morning, a message of forgiveness I had planned to keep private. As I unfolded it, I noticed something missing. A silver drive. It wasn't there. Panic fluttered in my chest. I glanced toward the sound booth, empty. The technician had stepped away. Cole smiled, waiting for me to begin. I looked out at the guests, at the sea glittering behind them, at the quiet figure of Mrs. Oren. My voice trembled as I started to read. Cole, I never knew love could be both fragile and fierce until you. You've taught me that kindness isn't weakness, and forgiveness isn't surrender. The words blurred as I spoke them, carried on the wind. For a brief, precious moment everything felt still. Then a soft hum rose again from the speakers. The guests turned. The technician sprinted back, waving frantically. It's auto-playing another file. Dana gasped, stepping forward. Turn it off. But before anyone could, a new voice filled the air. A man's voice, older, rough with regret. If you ever hear this, it means I failed to fix what I broke. The crowd fell silent. Cole's hand tightened around mine. What is this? And I knew with sick certainty that the attic recording had found its way into the ceremony. The voice crackled through every speaker, deep and weathered, carrying the weight of decades. Cole, if you're hearing this, then Dana never told you the truth. Gasps rippled through the guests like a current. Some turned toward Dana, others toward me. Cole's hand fell away from mine. You were never supposed to grow up in my shadow, the voice continued. But the night the fire took your mother, your real mother, Dana promised she'd raise you as her own. I thought she meant it out of love. I didn't know she meant it out of guilt. My stomach turned to ice. Cole's eyes widened, confusion blooming into disbelief. What is this? Dana stumbled forward, her face white as lace. Stop it. Turn it off now. The technician was already pulling cables, but the system had frozen. The voice went on, implacable. She hid you from the Oren name, told you I'd abandoned you. But I watched from a distance. Every birthday, every school event. You look so much like your mother it broke me. I left this recording for you so you'd know the truth before you married. You deserve to know who you really are. Someone whispered. Oren. Did he say Oren? All eyes swung to Mrs. Oren at the back. She didn't flinch. Her chin lifted, eyes shimmering with tears. Dana, the voice said finally. You did what you thought was right. But lies have long legs, and they always run back home. The recording ended in a low hum, then silence. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then murmurs erupted. Half disbelief, half scandal. Cameras lifted. Guests whispered Cole's name like a question. Cole turned to his mother, voice hoarse. Mom, what is he talking about? Dana shook her head rapidly. He's lying. He was always a cruel, jealous man. I only wanted to protect you. From what? He demanded. From my real family. Her voice cracked. From pain. From being dragged into their mess. You were mine, Cole. Mine to keep safe. Mrs. Oren stepped forward, her silver hair glinting in the sun. He's not lying, she said softly. That voice belonged to Nathan Oren, my late husband. Cole, you're his son. A collective gasp rolled through the garden. Cole's face went pale, his mouth opening and closing with no sound. That can't be true, he whispered. Dana lunged forward, gripping his hand. You were a baby, Cole. You don't remember the fire, the screaming. Nathan wasn't there for you. I saved you. Mrs. Oren's gaze softened. You took him, Dana. You stole him. The crowd's murmur grew louder, recording phones blinking red. I could see the story spreading in real time. The perfect polished Sloan wedding turning into a public reckoning. Cole staggered back a step, his hand slipping from Dana's grasp. You lied to me my whole life. Tears streamed down Dana's cheeks. I gave you a better one. But you built it on ashes, he said, voice breaking. How could you? I wanted to reach for him to steady him, but my own hands trembled. All this time, the secrecy, the tension, the strange familiarity between Dana and Mrs. Oren, it all made sense now. Mrs. Oren looked at me then, her eyes weary but kind. Victoria, you were never supposed to find that recording. But maybe fate wanted the truth out before vows were made under false names. Dana whirled toward her. You planned this. You set this whole thing up to ruin me. Mrs. Orange shook her head. No, Dana. You did that the moment you chose silence over truth. Security finally managed to cut the audio system, but the damage was done. The crowd was restless, half shocked, half hungry for more. Cole's voice dropped to a whisper. I don't even know who I am anymore. I stepped closer, heart pounding. You're still you, Cole. None of this changes that. He looked at me, eyes glassy. Doesn't it? Behind him, Dana collapsed onto a chair, sobbing quietly into her gloved hands. For the first time, she looked small, no longer the unshakable matriarch but a woman haunted by her own choices. Mrs. Oren reached for her son's arm. Come home, Cole. Let me tell you everything. He hesitated, torn between two worlds, the mother who raised him and the truth that had just shattered him. The harpist, unsure what else to do, began to play softly again. The melody floated over the uneasy silence, beautiful and broken. And as I stood there, veil trembling in the wind, I realized this wedding might never see vows, but it would be remembered forever. The hall fell into a stunned silence that hummed louder than any music could. I stood frozen, my fingers still clutching the edge of the table where the bouquets rested. The faint scent of lilies and jasmine hung thick in the air, almost mocking the chaos that had erupted moments ago. Dana's voice, sharp and trembling, still echoed in my ears. Turn it off. That wasn't supposed to be heard, she had cried, but by the time anyone reached the speaker, the words, the truth, were already out. Cole had turned pale, his usually steady expression crumbling into disbelief. He looked from me to his mother as if trying to understand what had just happened. My heart pounded against my chest so violently I thought it might give me away. I hadn't meant for things to unfold like this. I only wanted peace, a quiet ceremony where everyone could smile and breathe without judgment. But the moment the whisper, her whisper, filled the room, there was no turning back. I felt Mrs. Oren's gaze on me from across the hall. She stood in her quiet way, hands folded before her, calm amid the storm. Her eyes, however, said something else, something like it's time. The same phrase she had used that night when she warned me. Truth has its own way of speaking. My chest tightened as I finally understood what she'd meant. She knew. She had always known. Cole moved toward me, his voice low but edged with confusion. Victoria, did you know about this? I shook my head, too afraid that my voice would betray the storm within. No, Cole, I didn't. I swear I. Before I could finish, Dana stepped between us. Her face was drained of color, but her eyes burned with anger and fear. This is manipulation. Someone's trying to humiliate me. That recording, it's been tampered with. Her words fell flat against the walls, too desperate to sound true. Guests whispered, exchanged glances, and some even stepped back, unsure whether to comfort her or watch the drama unfold. Cole's father, a quiet man who rarely spoke at family gatherings, cleared his throat from his seat near the aisle. Dana, he said evenly. The voice was unmistakably yours. You can deny what you said, but we all heard it. For the first time, Dana seemed truly speechless. Her lips parted, but no words came out. I felt the room's weight shift toward me. The pity, the sympathy, and something else. A quiet recognition of restraint. I hadn't retaliated or accused her publicly. I'd stayed composed, though my heart screamed otherwise. And now, that composure had become my armor. I turned slowly to the crowd and spoke, my voice steadier than I felt. No one here deserves to be shamed, not even those who hurt us. What you heard wasn't meant to destroy anyone, but I won't pretend it didn't happen. I just hope someday we can understand each other without cruelty. A ripple of quiet fell over the room. Even Cole's eyes softened, though confusion still lingered in them. He reached out, taking my hand gently. His fingers were warm but trembling. You still want to go through with this? He asked softly. I hesitated, looking toward the grand doors of the hall where morning light was starting to pierce through. Somewhere beyond those doors, cameras waited, and guests lingered, eager for gossip to take home. My throat tightened. "I want truth," I whispered. "More than I want perfection." Mrs. Oren stepped closer now, her voice calm yet carrying the weight of someone who had waited years for this moment. "Sometimes," she said softly, "truth needs the courage of those who can forgive." Her eyes met mine, then turned briefly toward Dana, whose posture wavered as if those words struck something deep. Cole looked between the two of us. "Mrs. Oren," he said cautiously, "you seem to know something about all this. Is there something else we need to hear?" For a second, her expression shifted, a flicker of hesitation before she nodded slowly. "Yes," she said, "but not here. Not yet. Some truths belong to quieter rooms." The tension in the air thickened, and I could feel the guests collectively leaning in, hungry for the next revelation. Dana's jaw tightened, and she grabbed her purse as if to anchor herself. "You will not drag my family name through the dirt," she hissed under her breath, but I caught every word. Cole turned to me again. "Victoria, maybe we should step away for a bit," he murmured, voice protective but uncertain. "Let's go somewhere private." As he led me toward the side corridor, I could still hear the murmurs of guests behind us, some sympathetic, some scandalized. But through it all, I caught Mrs. Oren's voice once more, quiet and almost lost beneath the noise. "The attic," she whispered to no one in particular. "That's where it all began." I froze mid-step, the words lodging themselves in my mind like a spark waiting to ignite. The attic. What could possibly be in the Sloane estate attic that linked a florist, a mother-in-law, and a wedding gone wrong? I didn't know the answer yet, but I knew, as I felt Dana's fearful eyes follow me down the hallway, that whatever waited in that attic was the key to everything that had happened, and everything still to come. By the time the last guest had been ushered out of the hall, the air outside had turned heavy with the scent of salt and rain. Clouds gathered over the coastal ridge, casting gray streaks across the evening sky. Cole drove us back to the Sloane estate in silence, his jaw tight, his hands gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles turned pale. The world outside blurred, a mix of trees, rain, and 1,000 unspoken questions between us. When we finally pulled into the long gravel driveway, the mansion loomed ahead like a ghost of its own past. I'd visited countless times before, but that night it felt different, like the walls themselves held their breath. Cole didn't speak until we stepped through the doors and the silence swallowed us whole. "Why did she mention the attic?" he finally asked. His voice carried a mix of fear and frustration. What could possibly be there? I hesitated, brushing rain from my hair. "I don't know," I said softly. "But whatever it is, Dana's terrified of it." "Did you see her face when Mrs. Oren said those words?" He nodded slowly, his brow furrowed. "She looked like she'd seen a ghost." Lightning flashed through the tall windows, illuminating the long corridor ahead. Portraits of generations of Sloanes lined the walls, men and women with stern eyes and gilded frames. I remember Dana once telling me, in one of her rare moments of warmth, that the family kept everything: letters, records, old photos. "We believe history tells you who you are," she had said. But now, as we climbed the spiral staircase toward the top floor, I couldn't help but wonder, what part of that history had been buried so deeply that even her son didn't know? The attic door creaked when Cole turned the brass knob. The hinges groaned like something waking from a long sleep. A thin layer of dust covered everything: the trunks, the faded furniture, the forgotten decorations from celebrations decades old. The air was thick, smelling faintly of cedar and thyme. Cole found the light switch, but it flickered only once before giving out. I pulled out my phone flashlight, the beam slicing through the dimness. The light caught something small, an envelope wedged beneath a stack of brittle linen. I reached for it. It was addressed in delicate handwriting, to the Sloane family. From M. Oren. My pulse quickened. "Cole," I whispered, showing him the envelope. "She left something here." He took it from me carefully, as though it might crumble. His fingers hesitated over the seal before he tore it open. Inside was a short letter written in neat cursive ink. For the truth that waited too long. Some kindnesses are buried not by time, but by pride. What was taken from me belonged to someone else before it belonged to you. In this house lies the voice of your beginning, not your mother's. Cole read it twice, his voice faltering at the last line. The voice of your beginning. What does that even mean? Before I could answer, something clicked softly from across the room. It was the sound of a drawer sliding open on its own weight. Cole's flashlight swept toward the noise, revealing an old chest tucked beneath the eaves, a massive wooden trunk bound with brass locks, the kind used to hold keepsakes or heirlooms. He crouched down beside it, brushing away dust. I've never seen this before, he said. Mom never mentioned anything stored up here. Because she didn't want anyone to, I murmured. My hands trembled as I helped him lift the heavy lid. Inside lay stacks of yellowed documents, a child's blanket, and a faded photograph resting on top. The picture showed a young woman holding a baby. Her smile small, uncertain, but her eyes unmistakable. I leaned closer, my breath catching. It was Mrs. Oren. Cole blinked, confusion twisting across his face. That's her. But why is she here? Why is she holding? He stopped mid-sentence as realization dawned. His eyes darted between the photograph and the old birth certificate lying beneath it. It bore his name. The air seemed to vanish from the room. My pulse roared in my ears. Cole's voice broke as he whispered. This says my mother is Margaret Oren, not Dana Sloan. For a long moment, neither of us moved. The rain hammered against the windows, thunder rolling in the distance as if punctuating the revelation. I looked at him, his face pale, his breath shallow. Cole, I said softly. It means she wasn't lying when she said truth would speak for itself. He staggered back, gripping the edge of the trunk. All this time, Dana wasn't my mother. I swallowed hard, the weight of it pressing on my chest. She raised you, yes, but this explains everything. The distance, the resentment, the way she looked at Mrs. Oren during the wedding. She's been hiding this your whole life. Cole ran a hand through his hair, pacing in disbelief. Why would she do that? How could she take someone's child? Before I could answer, the sound of footsteps echoed faintly from below, the unmistakable rhythm of heels on wood. Dana's voice floated up the stairs, sharp and urgent. Cole, Victoria, what are you doing up there? Cole froze, his jaw tightening. I could see it in his eyes, the mix of heartbreak and fury twisting together. He turned to me, his voice low and determined. It's time she tells the truth herself. I nodded, my heart pounding. We waited as her footsteps drew closer, the air thick with everything unsaid. The trunk sat open before us, the proof, the photographs, the letter, and with every step she took, the walls of her carefully built world began to crumble. When she appeared in the doorway, her face drained of color as her gaze landed on the open chest. She didn't say a word, but her eyes confessed everything. The attic seemed to shrink as Dana stood in the doorway. The yellow beam from my phone carved her face in half, one side pale and trembling, the other locked behind the hard mask she always wore at public dinners. The thunder outside rumbled again, shaking dust from the rafters. Cole stepped forward first. You knew, he said. His voice didn't rise, but the quiet in it was worse than shouting. You knew about this trunk, about the letter, about her. He pointed toward the photograph that still lay open on the floor. Mrs. Oren holding a newborn. Dana's hand reached for the wall as though she might steady the world itself. Put that away, she whispered. You have no idea what you're stirring up. I'm stirring up my life, Cole answered. Who am I, Mom? Or should I call you Mrs. Sloan for the record? Her breath hitched. For a moment I thought she might deny everything as she head downstairs, but then her shoulders sagged. I never meant for you to find this, she murmured. Not like this, not today. Then when? Cole demanded. When I'm too old to care. When she, he nodded toward me, has to live with a lie too. Dana's eyes glistened, and the proud elegance that usually wrapped her like a gown began to unravel. You were so small, she said, her voice breaking. I thought she was gone forever. Margaret Oren worked for my husband's parents, your grandparents. She was barely 20, unmarried, and the scandal would have destroyed her. When the baby came early, she nearly died. Your father said the simplest way to keep everyone safe was to register you under our name. Cole shook his head slowly, disbelief clouding his eyes. You took me. I saved you, she said sharply, then softer. At least that's what I told myself for years. When she recovered and begged to see you, your grandfather sent her away. He called it mercy. I called it order. Lightning flashed again, and the attic filled with white light. Dana sank to her knees beside the trunk. I thought if I raised you with every comfort, it would balance what we'd done. But every time I looked at you, I saw her eyes looking back. I hated her for that. And I hated myself even more. The silence that followed pressed against the beams until they seemed to groan under it. Cole stood motionless, torn between fury and pity. I knelt beside him, touching his arm. Cole, I whispered, she's telling the truth. It doesn't make it right, but... A creak sounded behind us. We turned to see Mrs. Oren standing in the stairwell, the storm light haloing her silhouette. She carried an old key ring in one hand, her florist's apron still dusted with petals. I didn't mean to interrupt, she said quietly. But perhaps it's time I told the rest. Dana's eyes widened. You, how did you even get in here? Mrs. Oren stepped forward, calm as ever. You left the side door unlatched. The same way you left the past half open. She glanced at Cole, her expression tender but steady. You were my son once. Only for a few hours, but long enough to know the weight of your heartbeat. They told me you died. I lived 20 years believing that lie, until I saw your photograph in a magazine feature about the Sloan family. I recognized your eyes immediately. Dana covered her mouth, a small sob escaping. I begged them not to print that story, she whispered. Mrs. Oren nodded. I came to the estate the following week, disguised as a supplier. You hired me as a gardener without realizing who I was. I thought I'd be content just to see him from a distance, but when I met Victoria, when I saw how she treated people, I felt something shift. I realized the truth had to come out before the same cycle swallowed another generation. Cole turned to her slowly. You recorded the rehearsal. She met his gaze without shame. I placed a recorder among the flowers. I didn't plan for it to play today, but fate tends to keep its own schedule. Dana let out a long breath, part sob, part relief. You wanted to ruin me, she said. No, Mrs. Oren replied, her voice trembling but firm. I wanted to free us all. I couldn't steal back the years, but I could stop the lies from spreading into theirs. She looked between us. You love her, Cole. Don't let bitterness become your inheritance. For the first time that night, Cole's anger cracked into tears. He covered his face, shoulders shaking. I held him, feeling the storm outside echo in every heartbeat. Dana knelt beside him, hesitant, as if unsure she had the right to touch him anymore. I'm sorry, she whispered. I don't deserve forgiveness, but I never stopped loving you. He lowered his hands slowly, meeting her eyes. Then prove it, he said. Tell everyone the truth tomorrow, before the wedding resumes. Mrs. Oren nodded approvingly. Yes, let the truth stand in daylight for once. Dana hesitated, looking from her to me, then to Cole. If I do, she asked softly, will you still want me there? Cole's answer was quiet but certain. Yes, but not as the woman who hid my past, as the one who finally let it breathe. Outside, thunder rolled one last time, then faded into a slow, cleansing rain. The house seemed to exhale with us. We stood together in the dusty attic, 3 women bound by one truth, 1 man caught between 2 mothers, and for the first time since the rehearsal, there was no pretense left in any of us. Tomorrow the world would hear everything. But for that moment, all we could do was breathe, and hope that honesty would be enough to begin again. Morning came like a hesitant apology. The rain had washed the lawns clean, but the air still carried the aftertaste of thunder. Sharp, metallic, expectant. The Sloane estate was quieter than it had been in days, though beneath that hush something trembled. The murmurs of staff, the shuffle of reporters already gathering beyond the gates, the whisper of history rearranging itself. Downstairs, the great hall that had once hosted laughter and champagne flutes now stood half empty. The wedding planners were back, but this time there was no music, no performance. Just the slow rebuilding of a ceremony that could no longer pretend to be perfect. Cole stood by the tall windows overlooking the garden, his reflection faint against the glass. The world outside buzzed with headlines. Sloane heirs' true parentage exposed. Hidden scandal rocks prestigious family. He had turned off every notification, but they still found their way in. Echoes, whispers, the weight of every camera waiting for him to emerge. I approached quietly. His tuxedo jacket hung over a chair, and his shirt sleeves were rolled up, revealing the ring of faint bruises from last night's chaos. "They're waiting for a statement," I said softly. "I know," he murmured, not turning around. "And they'll get one. Just not the one they expect." I reached out, resting my hand on his arm. "We don't have to go through with this, not today. You don't owe the world a performance. Not after everything." He finally looked at me, eyes raw but resolute. Victoria last night was hell. But for the first time I woke up without pretending to be someone else. I don't want to hide anymore. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that love could stand against the storm outside. But as I glanced toward the doorway, where flashes from cameras already danced against the marble floor, I wondered if love could survive exposure. Dana entered, pale but composed. She had dressed in a simple slate dress. No jewelry, no facade. Behind her, Mrs. Oren followed, her florist's apron replaced by a modest navy coat. They looked like two different lives walking side by side toward a fragile peace. "The press is asking to see you both," Dana said. "They'll want details. Dates." Cole straightened. "They'll get the truth. All of it." Mrs. Oren stepped forward gently. "Cole, truth can heal, but it can also wound if it's thrown instead of spoken. Choose your words carefully, especially today." He nodded, but I could see the flicker of anxiety in his jaw. The battle between pride and pain. The doors opened, and the murmur of reporters filled the room like a tide. Microphones rose, flashes fired. Cole took my hand without hesitation, and together we stepped into the light. He spoke first. His voice trembled only once. "Yesterday, our family's secret came to light. I was born under another name, to a woman who loved me before the world told her she wasn't allowed to. My adoptive mother raised me with everything she had, and for that I will always be grateful. But lies, no matter how carefully built, always collapse. Today isn't about scandal. It's about truth, and the people who have the courage to live by it." A ripple passed through the crowd, some sympathetic, others hungry for more. Then one question cut through the noise. "Mr. Sloane, are you still going through with the wedding?" The words froze the room. Cole looked at me. Everyone did. My heart thudded once, hard enough to echo. I thought of the cameras, the headlines, the whispers that would never stop. I thought of the vows we had written. For truth, even when it hurts. I thought of how love wasn't a fairy tale, but a choice you made when everything beautiful turned difficult. I took a step forward. "Yes," I said, my voice steady. "We are." The silence that followed was stunned. Then came the flurry of shutters, the rush of sound. But in the middle of it all, Cole smiled. A small, disbelieving smile that reached his eyes for the first time in days. Mrs. Oren pressed a hand to her chest, tears gleaming. Dana stood beside her, silent but nodding, as if releasing something she had carried for decades. Outside, the clouds broke, and sunlight spilled through the stained glass, painting us in fractured color. The ceremony resumed at noon, No guests of status this time, no orchestra, no gold-draped banners. Just family, truth, and the handful of people who had survived the storm. When I said I do, I didn't just marry Cole. I married the truth of who he was, the pain that made him, and the honesty that would define whatever came next. As we kissed, the crowd outside erupted. Half applause, half chaos, but inside it was quiet, peaceful, real. Mrs. Oren whispered to Dana, "Maybe love was the inheritance after all." And for once, Dana didn't argue. She just smiled faintly and said, "Let's hope they spend it wisely." The morning after the wedding felt like waking in the aftermath of a storm that refused to leave. Sunlight filtered through the blinds in pale ribbons, but even its warmth couldn't drown out the low hum of chaos outside. The press hadn't slept. Headlines sprawled across every screen, talk shows debated motives, and the internet dissected every second of the ceremony as if it were a national scandal. Heir without a name, the real Sloane's son. From wedding to whirlwind, the bride who stood by the secret. Each headline carved deeper into our fragile calm. Cole sat at the kitchen table in our suite, still in yesterday's shirt, coffee untouched. His phone kept vibrating. Calls from investors, the family foundation, his father's old business partners. His world was unraveling in real time, and every word about it was being recorded. "They're freezing accounts," he said finally, voice hoarse. "Some board members want to suspend the merger until I clarify my position." "Clarify?" I asked softly. "They mean distance yourself from the truth." He looked up at me, eyes bloodshot. "They mean pretend again." A notification blinked across the TV. An emergency shareholders meeting scheduled for noon. Dana's face flashed briefly on the screen as she entered the Sloane building, surrounded by reporters. She didn't flinch, but I could tell by the way she clutched her bag that she was walking through fire. "She's trying to protect you," I said. Cole shook his head. "No. She's protecting what's left of the Sloane name." Before I could answer, there was a knock at the door. When I opened it, Mrs. Oren stood there, dressed simply, holding a small parcel wrapped in brown paper. "I didn't want to intrude," she said gently. "But this belongs to both of you now." Inside the parcel was a stack of letters, faded envelopes, sealed and unopened. On each one, the handwriting read to my son. Cole froze. "These are from my birth mother." Mrs. Oren nodded. "She wrote them every year on your birthday. I couldn't deliver them then, not with the Sloanes watching. But you deserve to know her words now." He sank onto the couch, fingers trembling as he opened the first letter. The voice inside was tender and aching, full of apologies and dreams. "I hope you never forget that you were loved first. Not by wealth, not by duty, but by me." Tears welled in his eyes, and when he finally looked up, something in him had shifted, grief giving way to resolve. "If they want to take the company, let them," he whispered. "But they won't take who I am anymore." Mrs. Oren reached out and squeezed his shoulder. "That's the man your mother wanted you to be." By noon, we arrived at the Sloane headquarters. The building loomed like a monument to everything cold and pristine about that family. The marble floors, the portraits of ancestors who measured love and legacy. Inside the boardroom, a dozen faces turned toward us, cameras discreetly tucked in the corners. Dana sat at the head of the table, flanked by men who looked at Cole as if he were both heir and enemy. She gestured subtly for us to sit. One of the older board members, Harrington, cleared his throat. "Cole, you've placed the company in jeopardy. The markets don't respond well to scandal. Investors are nervous. We propose a temporary step back from executive duties. Until this situation is contained." Cole's voice was calm. "You mean until I stop being who I am?" "Until the story dies down," Harrington said. Cole leaned forward. "Then let me give you a new story." He tapped the table, the sound sharp as a gavel. "The company was built on secrecy, on appearances that cost people their lives. My biological mother was cut out of this family because she didn't fit the picture. That picture ends now. If investors want transparency, then they'll have it, from the top down." Murmurs rippled through the room. Dana's eyes filled with something between fear and pride. For once, she didn't interrupt. Harrington frowned. "You're playing with fire, Cole." Cole smiled faintly. "No. I'm just done pretending it isn't burning." The meeting ended in uneasy silence. Outside, reporters swarmed, but this time Cole didn't hide. He spoke plainly, without handlers or rehearsed lines. And for the first time, the headlines that followed carried a different tone. Cole Sloan faces scandal head-on. I won't hide who I am. Truth over legacy. The new face of the Sloan Empire. That night, we returned home to quiet. Cole sat with the remaining letters spread before him, reading each one in the dim light. "I spent my whole life chasing approval," he said softly. "Now I just want peace." I took his hand. "Then let's build it from scratch. Our own version of the Sloan name. One that tells the truth." He smiled, a tired, genuine smile. "With you I think I can." But as I turned off the lights and lay beside him, a flicker of unease stirred deep inside me. Because outside, beyond the walls of our fragile calm, the media machine was still grinding. And I knew too well that truth never stopped at the first confession. It demanded more. Tomorrow someone would dig deeper. Someone always did. The storm we thought had passed came roaring back 2 days later. Louder, sharper, and this time with my name on it. It started with a single message notification on my phone. The sender was anonymous, but the subject line was unmistakable. "You should see what's trending." Click the link. The video began mid-sentence. A shaky clip of me in the bridal suite hours before the wedding. My hair was half-pinned, veil draped across the chair behind me. I was talking quietly to someone out of frame. My voice was calm, but there was a tremor of fear in it I remembered too well. "If she hurts him again, I'll make sure everyone knows what she did." Then a pause. My voice dropped lower. "She thinks secrets die with money. But they don't." The clip ended abruptly, cutting to footage from the ceremony, the same moment the recording had played before the vows. Only this time, it was spliced together to look like I had planned the entire thing, orchestrating the humiliation of Dana Sloan in front of the world. The video had already gone viral. Millions of views. Thousands of comments. She used the wedding to destroy her husband's family. Manipulative gold digger pretending to be sweet. Another social climber caught on camera. By the time I finished scrolling, my hands were shaking. Cole was on the balcony taking calls when he noticed my face through the glass. He came inside immediately. "What happened?" I turned the screen toward him. His expression darkened as he watched. "This is edited." "I know. But no one else does." Within hours, the fallout was everywhere. Invitations to interviews poured in, each framed as a chance to clear my name. But all I could see was another trap. The company's board panicked again, fearing the new wave of scandal would undo Cole's progress. Even Dana, despite everything, went back to damage control mode, calling me from the estate. "You have to issue a statement," she said, voice clipped but tired. "Deny everything. Say it was fake." "But it isn't fake," I said softly. "Someone really did record me that day. I just don't know who." There was silence on the other end. Then in a low voice she said, "It wasn't me." I believed her. Because whoever had leaked that clip knew too much about the timing, the files, the system in the ballroom. And only one other person had handled that audio, Mrs. Oren. By evening, the media parked outside our gate. Flashing cameras followed every car that passed. Cole met my gaze across the living room. "We can't hide anymore," he said quietly. "We need to talk to her." We drove to the florist's shop after closing. The glass windows reflected the amber streetlight, and the air smelled faintly of wilted roses and salt from the nearby sea. Mrs. Oren opened the door before we could knock, as though she'd been expecting us. "I wondered how long it would take," she murmured. "Why did you do it?" Cole demanded. "You promised my mother." "I didn't leak the video," she interrupted. Her voice was calm but edged with grief. "But I knew it existed." I stepped closer. "Then who did?" She hesitated, then turned toward a back shelf. From behind a row of dried lilies, she pulled out a small old-fashioned phone. Its casing cracked, its memory card still inside. "This belonged to someone who once worked for the Sloanes," she said. "Someone who wanted the world to remember how they were treated." The screen flickered to life, showing a familiar date, the day of the first rehearsal. Then another voice filled the shop, grainy but unmistakable. It was Dana's husband, long dead, Cole's supposed father. His voice was weary, angry, and broken. "You think money hides sin, Dana. But someday, the truth will speak louder than your lies." Cole's eyes widened, color draining from his face. "That's my father." Mrs. Oren nodded slowly. "Before he passed, he gave me that phone. He wanted you to know the truth wasn't just hers to carry. But I didn't release it. Someone else found it first." My stomach twisted. "Who?" The florist's gaze shifted toward the door. "Someone still inside the family." Before we could ask another question, her shop phone rang. She didn't move to answer it, but I did. The caller ID glowed with a name I hadn't seen in weeks. Evan, Cole's cousin, and the one who had handled the sound equipment on our wedding day. When I picked up, his voice was casual, almost taunting. "Quite the performance, Victoria. But you really should have checked which files I backed up." My blood ran cold. "You did this." He laughed softly. "No, sweetheart. I just made sure the world could see who you really are." The line went dead. Cole grabbed his jacket, eyes blazing. "He's not getting away with this." But I stopped him, pressing a trembling hand to his chest. "No, Cole. Not this time. If we fight lies with anger, we become them." Outside, the press lights flashed like lightning through the window. Inside, the truth thickened in the air like smoke. I finally understood what Mrs. Oren had meant months ago, when she warned me that truth has its own way of speaking. Now it was shouting. The morning after the leak, I woke to the sound of reporters shouting my name from the street below. Even through the glass, their voices sounded sharp, hungry. Cole's publicist had warned us not to leave the house, but the truth was already outside, spreading faster than we could contain. By noon, every major outlet had turned our story into entertainment. The wedding that exposed a dynasty. Teacher or manipulator. Love, lies, and the Sloan secret. My inbox overflowed with interview requests, and my phone wouldn't stop vibrating. The comments hurt most. Strangers dissecting my every gesture, twisting compassion into strategy. Some defended me, saying the Sloanes had used their power for too long. Others called me a liar who'd married up, just to ruin them from the inside. Cole tried to shut the world out. He stood by me through it all, even when his board of directors held an emergency meeting to discuss his public credibility. I could hear the tremor in his voice when he said, "They don't care about the truth, only headlines." He was right. But I wasn't ready to surrender our story to their version. That afternoon, while Cole took yet another call with legal advisors, I opened my laptop and went through every folder on the shared drive Evan had used during the wedding. He'd renamed files, hidden them in subfolders, even embedded some within music tracks. After an hour of searching, I found something strange. An audio clip marked, "Final Cut and Disco." When I clicked play, I froze. It was the unedited recording from the rehearsal. The same one the world had seen, but this time there was more. After my whispered words, "If she hurts him again, I'll make sure everyone knows what she did," another voice responded. "Quiet, Will. Evan." "She already did, Victoria," he'd said. "She hurt more than just you." The sound of a chair scraping followed, then muffled crying, Dana's. I sat back, chills running through me. Evan hadn't just leaked the video. He'd orchestrated it to make me look guilty while erasing his own role. But why? Before I could think, my phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. When I answered, a voice I hadn't expected to hear in months spoke gently on the other end. "Victoria, it's Mrs. Oren." I exhaled in relief. "You saw the video?" "I did," she said. "And I think I know why Evan's doing this. Meet me at the estate." There's something you need to see before he destroys it. When I arrived at the old Sloane mansion, she was already waiting in the garden, her hands clasped tightly over a weathered envelope. The air smelled faintly of jasmine and old secrets. "This was left for me years ago," she said, handing me the envelope. "Your father-in-law gave it to me the day before he died." I unfolded the letter carefully. His handwriting slanted across the page. Strong, deliberate. "If anything happens to me, tell my son that Evan is not his cousin by blood. He's the result of what Dana hid, the first betrayal she buried. I couldn't forgive her, but I couldn't abandon the boy either." My breath caught. "Evan is Dana's son." Mrs. Oren nodded slowly. "Born before her marriage. Your father-in-law raised him as a nephew to protect the family name. But Evan grew up knowing the truth and hating the lie." Everything snapped into place. His resentment, his obsession with exposing us, his cold smile when he called. "He's not trying to destroy you," she continued softly. "He's trying to destroy her, and everyone who ever sided with her." My phone buzzed again, a new message from Evan. Just 3 words, "Meet me tonight." I showed it to Mrs. Oren. She sighed. "He won't stop until he feels seen. But be careful. Truth told in anger can burn more than lies ever could." That evening, I met him at the same pier where Cole had proposed to me months ago. The sea crashed against the rocks, wind slicing through the air. Evan stood waiting, hands in his coat pockets, eyes shadowed. "You finally came," he said. "I saw the letter," I replied. "You wanted revenge on Dana, but you dragged everyone else into it." His laugh was bitter. "You think I wanted this circus? She raised me, Victoria, my own mother. And she got to live like royalty while I was sent to boarding schools with someone else's name." I took a careful step closer. "You could have told the truth without ruining Cole." His voice cracked. "He's everything I was supposed to be." For a moment, he looked lost, a man who had lived too long under someone else's shadow. Then I held out the letter. "If you really want justice, let the truth speak fully. Not just your edited version. Let the world see the whole recording, every voice, every word, including yours." He stared at me, torn. The wind blew hard, scattering a few pages of the letter. Finally he nodded. "Tomorrow, I'll send you the files." When I returned home that night, Cole was waiting, exhausted but hopeful. I told him everything. He didn't speak for a long time, just held me. For the first time since the chaos began, it felt like we were on the same side again. But as I drifted off to sleep, a thought gnawed at the edge of my mind. Evan had agreed too easily. Something told me the next morning's reveal wouldn't just save us, it would unearth something far more dangerous. And deep down, I wasn't sure any of us were ready for it. Morning came gray and heavy, as if the sky itself was holding its breath. Every news station buzzed with speculation. Would Victoria finally speak? Would the Sloanes respond? By now, the entire country had turned our scandal into a mourning ritual. Cole's PR team wanted silence, but silence felt like surrender. So we decided to let the truth speak for itself. Cole and I met Mrs. Oren at the small broadcasting studio downtown, the same place that had filmed the family's charity segments years ago. The irony wasn't lost on me. This time, there would be no rehearsed smiles, no scripted words, only truth. Evan had sent the files that morning, a single folder titled, "Full Recording, No Edits." He hadn't accompanied it with a threat or condition, only a simple message: play it as it is. Inside the studio, the producer tested the audio while we sat in silence. Dana was there too, summoned by Cole's insistence. She looked pale, smaller somehow, wrapped in a gray coat despite the warmth. "Whatever happens," she said quietly, "remember that I did love him. Both of them." Before I could ask what she meant, the red light blinked on. The host introduced us briefly, her tone careful, professional. Then she pressed play. The sound filled the room. Our voices, the rehearsal, the laughter. Then the whisper that had started it all. She's not good enough. Dana's face went rigid, her fingers clenching on her lap. Then came my own voice, soft, trembling, answering with grace. The audience, watching live from homes and phones everywhere, heard not manipulation but restraint. But the recording didn't stop there. The parts the public hadn't heard, the parts Evan had erased, began to play. Faint creak. Man sigh. "Dana," said a voice we all recognized. "Cole's father. If you keep hiding it, it'll destroy him. He deserves to know who he is." Dana gasped. The host's eyes widened. Then her own voice answered, breaking. "You think I don't know that? But I can't lose him. If he finds out Evan is his brother." Cole's breath caught audibly through his mic. "Brother," he whispered. The studio fell utterly still. The recording continued, unmerciful in its honesty. The argument escalated, Dana begging, her husband pleading. "It's too late," he said finally. "Secrets don't die quiet." Then a sound of glass shattering, a door slamming, and the recording ended with Mrs. Oren's voice, young, frightened, saying, "Sir? Are you all right?" Silence swallowed the studio. The host turned off the playback, her hand shaking. For a full minute no one moved. Then Dana whispered, "I tried to protect you." Cole stood slowly. His voice was raw. "Protect me from what?" "From knowing the truth about my own brother. My own father." Tears streaked Dana's face. "I was young, ashamed. Your father forgave me, but I couldn't forgive myself. So I built a story I could live with." She turned toward me, eyes glassy. "And you, Victoria, you were never the enemy. You just reminded me of who I used to be before the lies." The cameras were still rolling, capturing every word. But for once, no one was thinking about viewers or image. Cole knelt beside her. "Mom, the truth doesn't destroy love. Hiding it does." She reached for his hand, trembling. "I know. I just didn't want you to hate me." He pulled her into his arms, and for the first time since the chaos began, there was peace. Not triumph, not vindication, just peace. When the broadcast ended, the network replayed the segment across every platform. Viewers around the world watched a family's silence unravel into raw, human truth. Comments flooded in, not with scorn but empathy. "Now this is real forgiveness. The strength it takes to tell the truth. Incredible. Maybe we all hide something that needs light." By nightfall, Cole's company released a statement. Simple, heartfelt. "The truth has freed us. We move forward together." But as we left the studio, I noticed Mrs. Oren standing apart from the others, eyes glistening. I walked over. "You planned this, didn't you?" I asked softly. She smiled faintly. "Not all of it. Just the part where kindness wins." Then she handed me a small, folded note. "Your story doesn't end here, Victoria. It begins when you decide what to do with what's been revealed." Inside the note were only 5 words. "Use truth to heal others." I didn't know then how literal those words would become, but they would guide everything that followed. Because by tomorrow morning, the entire world would know my name, not as a scandal, but as a symbol of something far more enduring. That compassion, even when mocked or misunderstood, always finds its way home. The next day, morning sunlight poured through the blinds like a hesitant apology. For the first time in weeks, there were no reporters at the gate, no whispers outside the window, only the sound of real, living quiet. Cole and I sat on the balcony overlooking the Sloane Estate gardens, untouched coffee cooling between us. The world had seen the truth, unedited, unfiltered, and something remarkable had happened. They didn't cancel us. They listened. Across the internet, headlines read not of betrayal, but of courage. The Sloane Confession, how truth rebuilt a family. News anchors who once smirked at the drama now spoke of grace and healing. Even Cole's company stock, which had plummeted in the chaos, began to rise again, stabilized by a flood of public sympathy. Investors weren't chasing scandal anymore. They were investing in redemption. But for Dana, the transformation was slower and deeper. That afternoon, she called us to the old family chapel behind the estate. The place was small, quiet, sun-dusted. She stood at the altar, not as the elegant matriarch the public knew, but as a woman stripped of pretense. "I used to come here every Sunday," she said softly, turning toward us. "Not to pray, but to hide. I thought if I looked pious enough, no one would question what was rotting inside me." Cole walked closer, hesitant. "You don't have to do this in front of us." "Yes, I do," she replied, her voice trembling. "Because all my life I've chosen image over integrity. But you too chose truth. You stood there and let the world see everything I buried. And somehow, you did it with compassion." She paused, exhaling shakily. "I've decided to make it right." In her hand, she held an envelope, the deed to the small scholarship fund she had founded years ago, originally a vanity project for social circles. She pressed it into Cole's palm. "I'm transferring everything to create the Oren Foundation," she said. "For children born into silence. Orphans, adoptees, anyone searching for their roots. If I can't rewrite my mistakes, I can at least help others find truth without shame." Mrs. Oren, standing by the doorway, wiped a tear. "That's what forgiveness looks like," she whispered. Dana smiled faintly. "Forgiveness isn't forgetting, is it? It's choosing to remember without venom." I felt something shift inside me then, a quiet reverence for the strength it took her to face her own shadow. Over the next few weeks, the world moved on, but differently. Podcasts debated the meaning of truth in relationships. Commentators discussed the power of compassion in public scandals. Cole and I received letters, thousands, from people who had been silenced by secrets, thanking us for showing that confession didn't have to end in ruin. Yet not all of it was easy. Every day, Cole battled the ghosts of his father's lies, the weight of learning he had a half-brother still somewhere out there, Evan. But he faced it with quiet strength. One evening, I found him sitting in the study, scrolling through an old email draft. Unsent, dated the night before the wedding. The subject line read, "To Evan. You never sent it." Yes. He shook his head. I wanted to tell him I forgave him, but I wasn't ready then. He looked up at me, eyes steady now. "I am now." He hit send. Simple act. Yet it felt like the true ending of everything that had broken. The days that followed were quieter, peaceful, almost normal. Dana began volunteering with Mrs. Oren at the new foundation office. The media, hungry for chaos, found no drama left to chew on. And for the first time in our story, I felt something that had eluded us all along. Stillness that didn't hide guilt, but honesty. One evening, I recorded a short message for the Foundation's new website. My first public statement since the broadcast. Forgiveness isn't weakness. It's not pretending the wound never happened. It's standing in the light and saying, "Yes, this scar is mine, but it no longer defines me." And if this story teaches anything, it's that truth, no matter how painful, can be the beginning of something beautiful. That clip went viral overnight. Not for drama, not for shock, but because people were tired of outrage. They wanted redemption. They wanted hope. By the week's end, donations poured into the foundation. Schools reached out. Even strangers on the street stopped to say thank you. And when I looked at Cole, really looked at him, there was no trace of the man who had once flinched at every headline. There was peace in his eyes, the kind that only comes after you've told the truth and survived it. We didn't need a perfect ending. We'd built something rare, a healed one. And as I stood beside him on the balcony one last time, the city lights shimmering like distant promises, I realized this wasn't the end of our story. It was the beginning of a new kind of legacy. 1 year later, I walked through the courtyard of the new Oren Foundation Center in Boston. Morning sunlight cut through the glass roof and spilled across the names etched into the marble wall. Children reunited with families, adults who'd found their birth records, lives quietly pieced back together because someone finally said enough secrets. People called it the truth movement now. It wasn't about our scandal anymore. It had become a language of healing. Colleges taught case studies on the Sloan Confession. Journalists cited it when reporting ethically. And somehow, our greatest mistake had become a blueprint for change. Dana arrived first, early as always. Carrying a tray of coffee she refused to let anyone else serve. Her hair had gone silver at the edges, but her laugh, lighter, freer, still filled the halls. "Another reunion today," she said, eyes shining. "A girl from Costa Rica meeting her birth mother. Can you believe it's been a year already?" Cole joined us, his tie slightly crooked. A small reminder that he'd stopped performing perfection. He slipped his hand into mine, and I felt that same quiet steadiness that had carried us through everything. "She doesn't know," he murmured. "Her mom's been waiting since 2008. Behind us, a familiar voice called out, soft but unmistakable. "Still making miracles, I see." Mrs. Oren stood by the entrance, cane in hand, eyes bright with the kind of peace you only earn after decades of silence. She had moved closer to the foundation months ago, helping Dana run the counseling program. Together they had turned their past into purpose. "You were right," I told her. "Truth doesn't ruin families. It rebuilds them." She smiled faintly. "No, dear. People ruin families. Truth just clears the dust so love can breathe again." A bell chimed. The reunion ceremony was about to begin. Cameras hovered discreetly, but this time no one was chasing scandal. They were capturing grace. We gathered in the hall as the young woman stepped forward to meet her birth mother. The room held its breath, and when the two embraced, after 17 years apart, it felt like the entire world exhaled with them. The applause that followed wasn't loud. It was warm, human, grateful. Cole squeezed my hand. That could have been us, torn apart if we hadn't faced it. "It was us," I whispered. "And now it's everyone else who needs to know they can survive it too." After the ceremony, Dana stood at the podium, voice steady. "For years I believed the truth was a weapon, but it's a bridge. And today we walk across it, together." Her words drew a standing ovation. Even the reporters wiped tears. Later, as twilight settled, we walked outside. Cole, Dana, Mrs. Oren, and me. The city glowed in the distance, and I thought about how small we once felt against it. Now it felt like it was glowing for us. Cole turned to me. "So, what do we do now?" Smiled. "We live. We love honestly. We keep telling stories that scare us, until they set someone else free." He kissed my forehead, gentle and sure. "That's a good forever." And just before the lights dimmed across the courtyard, I glanced up at the foundation sign one last time. The plaque beneath read, "Founded in truth. Sustained by forgiveness." A simple sentence, but behind it was every scar, every confession, every moment we thought we wouldn't make it. We did. And the world somehow was better for it.